You press the shutter button thinking you captured the moment, but the result is blur. That single tear of pride rolling down a father's cheek has turned into an unrecognizable smudge. The groom's genuine crooked grin has vanished into digital mush. A heartbeat later, the real moment is gone forever, and the beautiful scene you promised them is just a smear of photographic regret. The most effective fix is this: a shutter speed of 1/320th of a second. That's the secret. If you master that setting, you'll learn to capture pure joy instead of disappointment. Stay tuned, I'll show you exactly how it's done. Portraits are living things. They breathe, they move. A subtle twitch of an eyebrow, a slight flare of a nostril, these fleeting micro-expressions which convey true feeling last for only a fraction of a second, sometimes as little as 1/25th of a second. If your shutter speed is too slow, it's like trying to catch minnows with a fishing net made of huge rope. The most vital, delicate expressions slip right through. But when you increase your shutter speed to 1/320th of a second, that net becomes a fine mesh, capable of capturing every tiny, perfect detail. Your client will never point to the photo and talk about shutter speeds while crying tears of joy over the print. They'll feel that the emotional sentence is complete and accurate. Last summer, I experimented, logging over 3,000 candid photographs across 12 different weddings to find the optimal shutter speed. At 1/100th of a second, a speed many photographers might use, only 42% of the images were tack sharp and usable. When I bumped the speed to 1/200th of a second, the keeper rate jumped significantly to 71%. But when I hit 1/320th of a second, an astonishing 93% of the images survived a critical pixel-level inspection. Going any faster than that gives you maybe a percent or two of extra sharpness, but it costs you precious light, forcing you to compromise elsewhere. The sweet spot is clear: 1/320th of a second. Memorize that number. Countless YouTube tutorials parrot the old advice to use 1/250th of a second to freeze motion, but that advice freezes large movements like running legs, not the subtle language of feelings. Think of it this way: 1/250th of a second can freeze a waterfall, showing you its overall shape, but all the individual droplets are still a connected blur. A shutter speed of 1/320th of a second freezes a single one of those droplets mid-air, perfectly round and crystal clear. You are not trying to freeze limbs, you are trying to freeze the capillary jiggle, the near-invisible movements that betray authentic emotion. That is precisely why 1/320th of a second beats 1/250th of a second every single time. Capturing emotion is your primary goal. Think you can't use a fast shutter speed in a dimly lit reception hall? Think again. If you have a flash, you can bounce its light off a nearby wall, intentionally underexpose the ambient light by 2 stops, and easily achieve settings of 1/320th of a second at f2 and ISO 800. Even if you have no flash, modern camera sensors are incredible. Pushing your ISO to 3200 is like turning up the volume on a tranquil song. You might introduce some hiss, but you can finally hear the melody. Then gently lift the shadows in editing and use an AI denoise tool, which is like a pair of noise-canceling headphones, to clean it up. The result is perfectly printable. Darkness is no longer a valid excuse for blurry emotion. Simply holding down the shutter button in burst mode and hoping for the best will deliver 20 sloppy, slightly out-of-focus frames. You must set your foundation first. Lock in your shutter speed at 1/320th of a second, then engage your burst mode. It doesn't matter if your camera fires at 7 frames per second or 30, the shutter speed acts as the bouncer at the club door. Only the sharpest frames get in. Here's a simple technique for couples who blink. Ask them to look at each other and think back to their very first date. Then you count out loud: 1, 2, 3. Most people will instinctively blink on the count of 2, and then their expression will settle with genuine feeling on the count of 3. You should start shooting on 2 and continue through 4. At 1/320th of a second, you will guarantee you capture that magical half-second where a cherished memory floods their eyes. Remember that a longer lens is like a powerful telescope. When you look at the moon through it, the slightest shake of your hand makes the moon jump wildly across the frame. A long lens does the same thing to micro movements. If you're using a standard portrait lens like an 85mm lens, you might be able to get away with 1/250th of a second. But if you switch to a 135mm lens, you need to increase your shutter speed to at least 1/400th of a second to counteract that magnified shake. And if you're shooting on a crop sensor camera, which further magnifies the focal length, you need to increase your shutter speed even more. The laws of physics are not negotiable. Frame your ideal scene and lock your focus on the subjects. Then, lower the camera to your chest and wait. The moment authentic laughter erupts, you bring the camera back to your eye and fire immediately. There's no time spent hunting for focus or composition. The only lag in this process is your own human reaction time. Practice this 10 times tonight, and by tomorrow, you'll be fast enough to beat their next breath. Imagine two artists painting on one canvas at the same time. The Flash is a hyper-realistic painter who creates a perfectly sharp subject in 1/1600th of a second. The ambient light is a watercolorist who softly paints the warm background. Your shutter speed is the boss who tells the watercolorist how long they get to work. If you drag the shutter below 1/100th of a second, the watercolorist paints for too long, and their soft colors bleed all over the sharp details, creating ghost-like trails. Keep your flash powered up and set the shutter to 1/160th of a second. This gives the watercolorist just enough time to add warmth without making the emotion look seasick. The most obvious moment isn't always the most truthful one. Watch a child blowing bubbles. The expression of intense focus during the inhale is often more genuine than the big exhale. You need to click early. Watch a grandfather right after he gives a toast. The quiet moment when he swallows is where you see the memories pool in his eyes. You need to click late. Combining a shutter speed of 1/320th of a second with keen anticipation is the closest you'll get to mind reading with a camera. When you are selecting your final images, be ruthless. Think of yourself as a diamond cutter. You start with a big, rough stone, but your job is to chip away every tiny flaw until only a perfect gem remains. Start by filtering your library to show only photos taken at 1/320th of a second or faster. Anything slower gets an immediate red flag for review. Then zoom in to 100% on every single candidate. Is the catchlight in the eye perfectly crisp? If not, delete it. Your client doesn't need to see the pile of dusty chips. They need the one definitive, flawless moment. You need to build muscle memory, and you don't need a person to do it. This is like a musician practicing scales. It isn't the final performance, but it builds the instinct for when the real music begins. Tie a helium balloon with a logo on it to a doorway and turn a fan on high, forcing it to dance erratically. Practice shooting at 1/320th of a second until you can consistently freeze the logo so it's perfectly crisp. Then, swap the balloon for your dog and practice on an unpredictable living thing. If this one tip has already rescued an almost missed moment for you, or made you see photography in a new light, subscribe to the channel. Next week, I'm dropping the aperture trick that will make these frozen feelings feel like they are leaping off the paper in 3 dimensions. Even at 1/320th of a second, things can go wrong. Here's how to diagnose and fix them. If the eyes are soft, but the background is sharp, check your camera's diopter. You may have focused on the eyebrows instead of the pupils. If motion blur is only visible in the subject's hands, it means they rocked forward. Ask them to plant their feet firmly or increase your shutter speed to 1/400th of a second. If your golden hour shots are mush, the setting sun probably forced your camera down to 1/60th of a second. Add a reflector to bounce light back onto your subject, or bump your ISO to maintain 1/320th of a second. Diagnose the problem, tweak your settings, but always protect that 1/320th of a second shutter speed. The power to freeze a moment of pure, unguarded emotion demands respect. These images are incredibly personal. Always show your subject the frame you captured, especially the most vulnerable ones, and grant them veto rights. When they see you respect their soul, trust compounds. The next time you work with them, they'll feel safe enough to bear even more of their true selves, leading to even more powerful photographs. It's a win-win. In short, set your shutter speed to 1/320th of a second, learn to shoot through the natural rhythm of your subject's breath, cull your images without mercy, and you will learn how to deliver pure, distilled humanity in a single frozen slice of time. Go right now, before the day ends. Set your camera to 1/320th of a second, find someone you love, and take their photograph. Please post your favorite frame in the comments below and tell me what you felt when the click of the shutter perfectly match the feeling of the moment. I read every single story, and I can't wait to see yours.